What if the very thing that made you brilliant is the same thing that's quietly ruining your life? What if intelligence, your prized gift, isn't a blessing at all, but a weapon slowly turning against you? Machiavelli didn't just study power. He dissected the mistakes of the powerful, and the most dangerous one wasn't ignorance. It was using your intelligence the wrong way. Before we go deeper, take a second. Subscribe to Philosophical Pulse, because what you're about to hear might save you from yourself. And if you skip ahead, you'll miss the one idea that ties this all together. So stay sharp. We're just beginning. The intelligence curse. Intelligence is admired, respected, feared. But what Machiavelli understood and most ignore is that intelligence doesn't just give you power. It gives you anxiety, doubt, isolation. Why? Because the smarter you are, the more you see. You see the angles, the flaws, the hidden motives behind every smile. You begin to overanalyze. Every decision becomes a chess match, and suddenly, you're not living, you're calculating. This is where intelligence begins to self-destruct. Machiavelli observed rulers who thought too much, who strategized every step, and forgot how to move with instinct. He warned, the wise man must know how to act like the beast. But beasts don't overthink. They act. Too much thought breeds hesitation. Hesitation breeds weakness. And in the game of power, weakness is blood in the water. The paralysis of options. Have you ever stood still because there were too many paths to choose? That's the curse of intelligence. You see 10 options. The average person sees one. But here's the paradox. Seeing more doesn't always help you win. Machiavelli knew that decisiveness wins wars. Not perfect plans. Not flawless logic. In The Prince, he praised men who acted boldly, not because they were right, but because they made others believe they were. You can be right, but if you act too late, it doesn't matter. The intelligent person wants certainty, but power doesn't wait for certainty. It rewards movement, and that's why the smart often lose. If this is making you rethink how you operate, hit the like button, subscribe to Philosophical Pulse, and tell me in the comments, has your intelligence ever gotten in your own way? I read every comment. Some of the most powerful insights come from you. Now, let's go deeper. Isolation. The silent side effect. Here's something no one tells you. The smarter you become, the lonelier it gets. Why? Because people don't like being outthought. Even friends start to resent it. They'll smile when you speak, but quietly distance themselves when they feel outmatched. You might not notice at first, but slowly, you start self-censoring, dimming your light, so others won't feel small in its glow. This is where Machiavelli whispers his most brutal truth. A man who is feared is safer than one who is loved. Not because love is weak, but because fear ensures survival. If your intelligence threatens people, they'll pretend to love you, while plotting against you in silence. To use your intelligence wrong is to shine too brightly without understanding who's watching. And envy is the deadliest mirror of admiration. The illusion of control. Smart people believe they can control everything. They plan for betrayal, predict outcomes, avoid risks, but control is an illusion, and intelligence, when misused, makes you addicted to it. Machiavelli warned about this exact mistake, trying to outthink chaos. But chaos doesn't play by the rules. It doesn't respect intellect. It respects movement, power, force. Sometimes, the fool who acts wins over the genius who waits. Because while the intelligent man is drawing maps, the ambitious man is burning bridges behind him. You don't control the world by understanding it. You control it by shaping how others perceive you. That's where real power begins. Coming up next, what Machiavelli taught about weaponizing simplicity, and why the most dangerous people are not the geniuses, but those who appear to be nothing at all. And remember, Skip this, and you'll miss the one truth that turns all of this on its head. So keep watching. You've only scratched the surface. And if this part made you uncomfortable, good. That means it's working. Subscribe to Philosophical Pulse, and let's keep going. A shift in focus. We assume intelligence always wins. But Machiavelli knew better. He knew that while the intellectual is busy crafting elegant plans, the so-called simple mind is already making moves. And the biggest downfall of the intelligent? Underestimating those who don't look smart. Because in the game of power, looking weak is the ultimate disguise. The cost of complexity. The intelligent person wants to be understood, to be seen as deep, layered, brilliant. But Machiavelli taught something brutal. The more complex you are, the easier it is to trip over yourself. Simplicity, in contrast, is sharp, direct, efficient. The peasant with one plan often succeeds before the genius with 5 even chooses one. Why? Because intelligence overcomplicates. It turns decisions into dilemmas. It questions every move with, "What if I'm wrong?" But the simple mind acts not because it's always right, but because it commits. And in a world that punishes hesitation, commitment is power. The invisible threat. Never underestimate the man who doesn't try to impress you. That's what Machiavelli would say if he saw today's world. We chase credentials. We seek validation. We assume those who don't speak in clever words are harmless. But here's the truth. The silent man sees more. The quiet observer holds his blade behind his back, while you show him yours, because the intelligent love to display their minds. The dangerous hide theirs, and in hiding, they learn your rhythm. Then, they strike when you least expect it. Machiavelli wrote, "It is double victory to deceive the deceiver, and no one is easier to deceive than the man who believes he's too smart to be fooled." We're just getting started. If you're enjoying this journey through Machiavelli's darker truths, like this video, subscribe to Philosophical Pulse. And comment below, have you ever been blindsided by someone you thought was beneath you? Your stories fuel this channel. Now, let's turn the page. The power of being underestimated. Here's a twist Machiavelli understood deeply. The man who is underestimated is often the most dangerous in the room. Why? Because no one sees him coming. When you appear harmless, you gain access to the plans of the arrogant. They speak freely. They show you their cards. And by the time they realize you were playing a different game, it's already over. The intelligent, on the other hand, are feared. Respected, yes, but rarely trusted. Because brilliance often makes people uncomfortable. They build walls around you. They watch their words. They treat you as a threat. But if you appear simple, they invite you in. And that's how you win. Not through being loud, but by being invisible. How intelligence reveals itself too soon. The curse of intelligence is that it seeks recognition. But recognition is a spotlight. And in power dynamics, the spotlight makes you a target. Think about the rulers Machiavelli advised. He didn't tell them to look wise. He told them to look relatable. Because when people fear your mind, they seek to contain it. When they admire you too much, they try to own you. But when they don't see you coming, that's when you strike. The most intelligent thing you can do is sometimes pretend not to be intelligent at all. Not forever, just long enough to let the proud fall asleep. And then, you wake them up with fire. Intelligence as a trap you build for yourself. Here's the final twist in this chapter. Sometimes the greatest trap isn't set by your enemies, it's built by you. The intelligent person creates a cage of identity. They think, I must be right. I must be the smartest. I must never fail. But this makes you predictable. And predictability is death in the pursuit of power. Machiavelli taught flexibility. He praised cunning over pride, adaptation over consistency. A man must be like the fox and the lion, fox, deceptive, unseen. The lion, forceful, feared. But intelligence that's not flexible becomes rigidity, and rigid minds snap under pressure. So ask yourself, is your intelligence still serving you, or have you become a prisoner of it? Coming up next, how intelligence becomes your downfall in relationships, influence, and war, and why the smartest people are often the easiest to manipulate. We're not even halfway there, and the final truth will leave you questioning your own mind. So keep watching. Don't skip. There's something waiting at the end. Drop your thoughts below. Have you ever misjudged someone because they didn't seem smart? If you have, you're not alone. But that lesson might have cost you more than you think. Subscribe to Philosophical Pulse. We're only warming up. A new threat emerges. What happens when a genius leads, but doesn't know how to command? When a brilliant mind steps into power, but forgets that understanding and control are not the same. Machiavelli warned, genius without strategy is like a ship with no rudder. It may have sails, but it will crash the moment the storm hits. The illusion of leadership. Being intelligent doesn't make you a leader. It makes you insightful. It makes you aware. It might even make you right, but it does not guarantee respect. And without respect, no leader survives. The intelligent often fall into this trap. They believe that their ideas alone will inspire loyalty, that truth will naturally persuade, that competence equals authority. But Machiavelli saw the world differently. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. Not because love is weak, but because love fades. Fear, even just a little, secures obedience. Genius that seeks to be adored often ends up betrayed. Power requires strategy, not just brains. Minds are sharp, but power is messy, and intelligence doesn't automatically know how to manage chaos. Strategy is the tool that gives intelligence its bite. Without it, brilliance becomes fragile. Machiavelli admired cunning rulers not for their intellect, but for how they used it. He praised Cesare Borgia not for being a genius, but for knowing when to strike and when to lie. He admired those who made people believe they were in control, while pulling the strings from behind. The intelligent who lack strategy often try to lead by reason alone. But people don't follow reason. They follow emotion, strength, mystery. The strategist knows when to be silent, when to provoke, when to disappear, and reappear stronger. Intelligence must serve a plan. If not, it serves your enemies. We're almost halfway there. If this has shaken something in you, like, subscribe, share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me this, have you ever seen someone brilliant fail miserably because they didn't understand people? I want to hear your story. Now brace yourself. The next part is sharp. Why brilliance invites sabotage. A harsh truth Machiavelli never softened. The brighter your light, the more shadows you cast. Intelligent leaders often invite enemies, not because of what they've done, but because of how they make others feel. Threatened, insignificant, replaceable. And here's the irony. The smarter you are, the more your downfall will come from below. A whisper here, a rumor there, and suddenly the very people you tried to help are sharpening their knives. Not because you failed them, but because you made them feel small. Machiavelli would say, do not let them see your full strength, because envy is a slow poison, and the intelligent, when they shine too boldly, drink it every day. Why genius fails in politics and war. In war and politics, intelligence alone is not feared. Force is, and even Machiavelli, the lover of strategy, advised princes to prepare their armies before their arguments. Armed prophets succeed. Unarmed ones are destroyed. Translation: vision without power is just a speech. In today's world, we see it often. Brilliant minds crushed in boardrooms. Innovators silenced in bureaucracies. Geniuses outmaneuvered by men with half their IQ, but twice their ruthlessness. Why? Because brains without boldness become background noise. A smart general with no loyalty from his men dies alone. A brilliant politician who pleads for votes is devoured by one who commands them. Genius must be wrapped in command presence. Otherwise, it will be dissected and discarded. How the smart leader destroys himself. Here is where it gets personal. The most dangerous enemy of the smart leader isn't the public. It's their own reflection, because genius breeds pride, and pride blinds. You start to believe you're untouchable, that your intelligence makes you immune to failure. But no one is immune. Even Machiavelli was cast aside when politics shifted. Not because he wasn't brilliant, but because brilliance, when left unguarded, attracts betrayal. The lesson? You don't just need a mind. You need a mask, a shield, and a sword. Because if your intelligence is naked, they will burn it in front of you, and your fall will be legendary. Coming up next, how manipulation preys on the intelligent, and why smart people are often the easiest to deceive. We're at the heart of it now, and if you think you've heard the darkest part, you haven't. Comment below. Have you seen genius collapse under its own ego? If this part made you rethink leadership, subscribe to Philosophical Pulse, because power doesn't just come from intellect. It comes from knowing when not to use it. The trap you never see coming. Smart people think they can't be fooled. They believe their logic protects them, that their education shields them, that their mind is a fortress. But Machiavelli saw it differently. He knew that the more intelligent you are, the more predictable you become to those who understand human nature. And that is your blind spot, because intelligence isn't immune to manipulation. It's often the prime target. The deception of logic. The intelligent rely on logic. They want things to make sense, to be reasoned, to be justified. But Machiavelli warned, people aren't moved by logic. They're moved by perception. And if someone can control the way you interpret reality, they control you. Even if you're a genius, you think you're choosing freely, but the choice was designed for you, presented in a way that appeals to your intellect, framed as the smart path, disguised as reason. That's how kings are manipulated by their counselors, how CEOs are manipulated by trusted advisors, how philosophers are led into wars they didn't believe in, because the smartest people don't see the strings. If the puppet master plays to their ego, intelligence craves validation. Here's a darker truth. Intelligence, real intelligence, seeks recognition, the desire to be understood, to be admired, to be acknowledged as wise. And that is where the manipulator finds his grip. Flatter the mind, feed the ego, make the smart man feel seen, and then insert the idea, guide the direction, shape the decision. The intelligent, believing it's their thought, will defend it with everything they have, even if it was never theirs to begin with. Machiavelli would smile at this. He knew that manipulation isn't about control. It's about influence disguised as agreement. We're nearing the halfway point of this journey. If this has struck a nerve, pause and subscribe to Philosophical Pulse. Then comment below. Have you ever realized too late that someone was feeding your mind exactly what they needed you to believe? Tell your story. Someone watching needs to hear it. And now let's go even deeper. The weaponization of trust. The smarter you are, the more you trust data, evidence, sources. But Machiavelli understood. All facts can be bent. All truths can be framed. All data can be filtered to serve a purpose. The manipulator doesn't need to lie outright. He only needs to shape what you see. Smart people are vulnerable to selective truth, to curated facts, to arguments crafted just well enough to seem right. You're not deceived by stupidity, you're deceived by structure. And the tragedy? the smarter you are, the more convinced you'll be that you arrive there by yourself. That's the trap. When smart people make emotional mistakes, intelligence doesn't kill emotion. It just hides it. But Machiavelli knew, when the right emotion is triggered, even the sharpest mind melts. You don't need to outsmart a genius. You only need to hit their emotional pressure points. Fear, insecurity, desire, shame. A master manipulator plays the mind, but strikes the heart. Because once your emotions are compromised, your logic becomes a slave. And the smarter you are, the more devastating your collapse. Why? Because you won't see it coming. And worse, you'll defend the person who manipulated you. Why Machiavelli never trusted intellect alone. At the heart of The Prince is a warning. Power is not won by intellect alone. In fact, those who depend on intellect are often overthrown by those who wield deception like a dagger. Machiavelli trusted clever men, but he feared those who knew how to manipulate cleverness itself. He knew that a leader who thinks too highly of his mind stops watching for subtle dangers. He starts believing that every outcome is calculated, that everything can be controlled. And that is where the fall begins. Because life is not a logic puzzle. It's a battlefield, a performance, a game of masks. And the man who confuses knowledge for immunity will bleed. Coming up next, we enter the final part of this journey. The moment when intelligence eats itself. How the mind, unchecked, turns in on itself and becomes your destroyer. It's not about enemies anymore. It's about you. This ending will sting, but it's the truth Machiavelli never said out loud. Comment below. Have you ever convinced yourself of something, only to realize you were led into that belief? That's not weakness. That's experience. Subscribe to Philosophical Pulse, because the mind is powerful, but only when you know where it betrays you. The final turn. You've heard how intelligence can be manipulated, how it can isolate you, how it can blind you with pride. But now, we confront the darkest part. The collapse that doesn't come from enemies, or betrayal, or war, comes from within. When your own mind turns against you, your thoughts eat themselves, and the very brilliance you built your life upon becomes the hammer that breaks it apart. The infinite mirror. Smart people think deeply. They reflect. They analyze. But when left unchecked, that reflection becomes a hall of mirrors. Every action is questioned. Every motive re-examined. Every word replayed in the mind again and again and again. And in this spiral of overthinking, confidence dies. You become paralyzed by possibilities, crippled by the fear of making the wrong decision. And worst of all, you stop trusting your instincts. Machiavelli warned, there is no avoiding war. It can only be postponed to the advantage of others. But the intelligent, in fear of making the wrong move, often make none. And that is the most dangerous mistake of all. The pressure of always being right. The curse of intelligence is that others expect perfection. And worse, you expect it from yourself. You start believing you must always be the one with the answer. Always the solver. Always the strong one in the room. But what happens when you fail? When your solution doesn't work? When your prediction is wrong? When your carefully calculated plan collapses? You don't just feel embarrassment. You feel your identity fracture. Because your intellect was your shield. Your pride. Your self-worth. So when it slips, you fall. Not just in reputation, but in spirit. And the smarter you are, the harder you fall. Because deep down you believed you were above it. That's what breaks you. Self-destruction through isolation. The intelligent often withdraw. Not because they dislike people, but because people don't get them. And slowly, that turns into silence, into avoidance, into exile. You stop explaining yourself. Stop seeking connection. You live in your mind a world of logic, theory, and control. But the mind is not a home. It's a weapon. And when it turns inward, it carves you apart. Doubt replaces certainty. Cynicism replaces hope. Disconnection replaces empathy. Until eventually, you don't trust anyone, not even yourself. Machiavelli believed a leader must know how to simulate compassion, to play roles, to manipulate appearances. But the intelligent man, lost in authenticity and analysis, refuses to perform. And so he fades, not because he wasn't brilliant, but because he forgot how to be human. We're nearing the final curtain. If you've stayed this long, it means this message matters to you. Subscribe to Philosophical Pulse, like this video, and comment below. Have you ever felt like your own thoughts were turning against you? Because you're not alone. You're not weak. You're just seeing too much without knowing where to stop. Let's finish this. When intelligence destroys meaning, here is the sharpest blade. The smarter you become, the more meaningless everything can start to feel. You understand the lies behind politics, the flaws in systems, the manipulation in relationships, the randomness of tragedy, the futility of control, and suddenly, nothing feels real, nothing feels sacred, nothing feels worth it. This is the quiet death of the soul, not from failure, not from betrayal, but from the realization that everything can be deconstructed, and that in doing so, you've also deconstructed your purpose. Machiavelli never spoke this aloud, but he lived it. He was exiled, forgotten, cast aside by the very system he understood better than anyone. Because understanding the game doesn't mean you get to win it. The rebirth or the ruin. So where does that leave us? Do we surrender our minds? Dull our brilliance? Hide our thoughts? No. But Machiavelli's real wisdom lies not in avoiding intelligence, but in learning how to wear it like armor, not shackles. You must learn to play dumb, to speak simply, to act boldly even when unsure, to pretend not to see, so you can move unseen. Intelligence must be hidden, tempered, weaponized, or it will destroy you, not by explosion, but by erosion. Slow, silent, internal. You'll collapse from the inside, while the world applauds your intellect, even as you disappear. But if you learn this, if you understand the final warning, you can rebuild, not as a slave to your mind, but as its master. Final message. The key you've been waiting for, here it is. The final idea you've waited for, the one you'd miss if you skipped ahead. Intelligence is a gift, but like fire, it must be contained, directed, watched closely, because fire warms, but it also burns. You are not destroyed by being smart. You are destroyed by being unaware of what your intelligence invites. Pride, isolation, deception, despair. To win, you must walk the edge. Be sharp, but silent, clever, but humble, and above all, always ask yourself, is my mind working for me or against me? That's the question that saves you, and only the brave ask it. If this journey meant something to you, if it opened a door you've been afraid to face, then share this video, comment your thoughts, subscribe to Philosophical Pulse, because this channel isn't just about ideas. It's about the war between the mind and the self, and you just made it through the fire. Machiavelli didn't write this last chapter, but he lived it, and so will you, if you don't learn to master the very thing you've always trusted, your own intelligence. Until next time, stay sharp, stay silent, stay dangerous,